or Senusret III, also written as Senusret III, or the Hellenized form, Senusret III, was a pharaoh of Egypt. He ruled from 1878 BC to 1839 BC during a time of great power and prosperity, and was the fifth king of the 12th dynasty of the Middle Kingdom. He was a great pharaoh of the 12th dynasty and is considered to be, perhaps, the most powerful Egyptian ruler of the dynasty. Consequently, he is regarded as one of the sources for the legend about Senusret. His military campaigns gave rise to an era of peace and economic prosperity that reduced the power of regional rulers and led to a revival in craftwork, trade, and urban development. Senusret III was among the few Egyptian kings who were deified and honored with a cult during their own lifetime. Pharaoh Orion, 39 years, spanning from 1878-1839, Capridicer Saunters, successor, Amenemhat era Yal titular consorterant, Knemet Nefertiti II, Itaket, perhaps Meretsegur children and 3, Knemet, Menet, Mireret, Senusret Sithather, Father Senusret Imether Nemetifer, 1839, BCBURIAL, uncertain. Possibly his pyramid at Dashur, or in his tomb at Abydos near the town of Was at monuments. Buin and Toshka dynasty. 12th dynasty Senus III was the son of Senusret II and Knemet Nefertiti, also called Knemet Nefertiti Weret the Elder. 3 wives of Senusret III are known for certain. These are Itaket, Knemet Nefertiti II, and Neferthenit. All 3 mainly known from their burials next to the pyramid of the king at Dashur. Several daughters are known, although they also are attested only by the burials around the king's pyramid, and their exact relation to the king is disputable. These include Sithather, Menet, Senusret, and Meret. Amenemhat III was most likely a son of the king. Other sons are not known. Senusret III cleared a navigable canal through the first cataract of the Nile River. This was different from the canal of the pharaohs, which apparently Senusret III also tried to build. He also relentlessly pushed his kingdom's expansion into Nubia from 1866 to 1863 BC, where he erected massive river forts including Buin, Semna, Shalfik, and Toshka at Urinardi. He carried out at least from major campaigns into Nubia in his years 8, 10, 16, and 19. His year 8 stela at Semna documents his victories against the Nubians, through which he is thought to have made safe the southern frontier, preventing further incursions into Egypt. Another great stela from Semna, dated to the 3rd month of year 16 of his reign, mentions his military activities against both Nubia and Canaan. In it, he admonished his future successors to maintain the new border that he had created. Year 16. 3rd month of winter, the king made his southern boundary at Ha. I have made my boundary further south than my father's. I have added to what was bequeathed me. As for any son, i.e., successor of mine, who shall maintain this border which my majesty has made, he is my son born to my majesty. The true son is he who champions his father, who guards the border of his begetter. But he who abandons it, who fails to fight for it, he is not my son. He was not born to me. Now my majesty has had an image made of my majesty at this border which my majesty has made, in order that you maintain it, in order that you fight for it. The Sebeku Stel, dated to the reign of Senusret III reign, 1878-1839 BC, records the earliest known Egyptian military campaign in the Levant. The text reads, His Majesty proceeded northward to overthrow the Asiatics. His Majesty reached a foreign country of which the name was Sekhmem. Then Sekhmem fell, together with the wretched Retenu, where Sekhmem Skmm is thought to be Shechem and Retenu, or Ret-Jenu, are associated with ancient Syria. His final campaign, which was in his year 19, was less successful, because the king's forces were caught with the Nile being lower than normal, and they had to retreat and abandon their campaign in order to avoid being trapped in the hostile Nubian territory. Such was his forceful nature and immense influence that Senusret III was worshipped as a deity in Semna by later generations. Jacques Morgan, in 1894. found rock inscriptions near Sel Island documenting his digging of a canal. Senusret III erected a temple and town in Abydos and another temple in Medamud. His court included the viziers Nebet and Khnumhotep. Ikernofret worked as treasurer for the king at Abydos. Sobekemhat was treasurer too and buried at Dashur. Senan cleared the canal itself for the king. Horkherti was king's acquaintance. A double-dated papyrus in the Berlin Museum shows year 20 of his reign next to year 1 of his son, Amenemhat III. Generally, this is presumed to be a proof for accordancy with his son, which should have been started in this year, according to Joseph W. Wegner. A year 39 hieratic control note was recovered on a white limestone block from a securely defined deposit of construction debris, produced from the building of the Senusret III mortuary temple. The fragment itself is part of the remnants of the temple construction. This deposit provides evidence for the date of construction of the mortuary temple of Senusret III at Abydos. Wegner stresses that it is unlikely that Amenemhat III, Senusret's son and successor, would still be working on his father's temple nearly 4 decades into his own reign. He notes that the only possible explanation for the block's existence at the project is that Senusret III had a 39-year reign, with the final 20 years in corrigency with his son Amenemhat III, since the project was associated with the project of Senusret III. His regnal year was presumably used to date the block, rather than year 20 of Amenemhat III. Wegner interprets this as an implication that Senusret was still alive in the first 2 decades of his son's reign. Wegner's hypothesis is rejected by some scholars, such as Pierre Tallet and Harco Willems. According to them, it is more likely that such a corrigency never occurred, and that the year 39 control note still refers to Amenemhat III, who may have ordered some additions to Senusret's monuments. Senusret's pyramid complex was built northeast of the Red Pyramid of Dashur. It far surpassed those from the early 12th dynasty in size, grandeur, and underlying religious conceptions. There has been speculation that Senusret was not necessarily buried there, but rather in his sophisticated funerary complex in Abydos, and his pyramid more likely being a cenotaph. Senusret's pyramid is 105 meters square and 78 meters high. The total volume was approximately 288,000 cubic meters. The pyramid was built of a core of mud bricks. They were not made a consistent size, implying that standardized molds were not used. The burial chamber was lined with granite. Above the vaulted burial chamber was a second relieving chamber that was roofed with 5 pairs of limestone beams, each weighing 30 tons. Above this was a third mud brick vault. The pyramid complex included a small mortuary temple and -1 smaller pyramids for his queens. There is also an underground gallery with further burials for royal women. Here were found the treasures of Sithither and Queen Mireret. There was also a southern temple. However, this has since been destroyed. Senusret III is well known for his distinctive statues, which are almost immediately recognizable as his. On them, the king is depicted at different ages and, in particular, on the aged ones he sports a strikingly somber expression. The eyes are protruding from hollow eye sockets with pouches and lines under them. The mouth and lips have a grimace of bitterness, and the ears are enormous and protruding forward, in sharp contrast with the even exaggerated realism of the head, and, regardless of his age, the rest of the body is idealized as forever young and muscular. In the more classical, pharaonic fashion, scholars could only make assumptions about the reasons why Senusret III chose to have himself portrayed in such a unique way, and polarized on two diverging opinions. Some argue that Senusret wanted to be represented as a lonely and disenchanted ruler, human before divine, consumed by worries and by his responsibilities. At the opposite, other scholars suggested that the statues originally would convey the idea of a dreadful tyrant, able to see and hear everything under his strict control. More recently, it has been suggested that the purpose of such peculiar portraiture was not to represent realism, but rather to reveal the perceived nature of royal power at the time of Senusret's reign. Senusret is a major character in Christian Jack's historical fiction series The Mysteries of Osiris. Some biblical scholars consider Senusret the pharaoh mentioned in Genesis 39-47, who elevated Joseph to a high administrative post, answerable directly to him.